Hi, thank you so much for taking the time to discover some new books. My name is Julia B. Gadet, and I am a writer who has finally become brave enough to follow my passion and dream of being a published author. My purpose is to help you discover the extraordinary. One of the secrets to being a great writer, in fact, is to also be an avid reader. This is why I am sharing with you 5 of my current favorites. First, number 5 is the 5th season by N.K. Jameson. This is the first book of hers I've read, and it is the most recent book I've finished, as in I finished it yesterday. It is a more serious and dark novel than my other choices, but I liked it for its differences. The world in this book, The Stillness is what it's called, is very interesting and well developed. The society within it is both efficient and in many ways terrible. Many issues of racism, slavery, survival are brought up, and there's a lot of tragedy and heartache throughout. You really care for the protagonists, Esun, Damaya, and Sayanite, as they make their way through this unforgiving land. The first thing that struck me is, in fact, that one of the point of views is told in second person, and I was completely destabilized. It was the strangest thing. It's like you are walking, you can't breathe. At first, I didn't like it, and I'm not sure I would want to read a lot of stories like that or read an entire novel like that, but I felt it worked here. I don't know if it was the author's intention, but you're kind of thrown off balance with it, just like the character is off balance by what has happened in her life. I highly recommend you give this book a try. It's part of a trilogy called the Broken Earth series, and the other 2 books are available if you do fall in love. This book is really for anyone who likes following protagonists who survive and even thrive after situations of despair, people who like exploring issues of social justice, and people who just like learning about strange different lands. So enjoy summer. My number 4 pick is a trilogy, The Crystal Shard, Streams of Silver, and The Halfling's Gem by R.A. Salvatore. It holds a special place in my heart because it contains one of my all-time favorite characters, Drizzt Do'Urden, and R.A. Salvatore is also one of my favorite authors growing up. This is really your classic adventure. It's the battle of good versus evil. It is set in the popular Dungeons & Dragons setting of the Forgotten Realms, specifically in a northern region called Icewind Dale, and we start in an area called Ten Towns. The main protagonist, as I said, is the drow elf, Drizzt Do'Urden. He is very unique, as up to this point there has been no good drow elves, and he is an exception. And of course he faces a lot of racism and rejection because of the brutal reputation of his race. Other main characters are Brunor, a dwarf heir to a lost kingdom, Regis, a conniving halfling with many tricks and secrets, Wolfgar, a young barbarian taken in by Brunor, and finally Canterbury, Brunor's headstrong adopted human daughter. Although these are officially the 4th, 5th, and 6th books in a larger collection of novels called The Legend of Drizzt, they are the first ones that were written about this character, and I find the best starting point, especially if you're not going to read the other books in the series. There are many of them. But if you fall in love, you can always read the 3 prequels about his life before he came to the surface world, and of course the ensuing sequels. What I love about this book and these books is the characters and the relationships. The very well described fight scenes and very well choreographed fight scenes. It really is like a movie in your head. And just the classic adventuring fun. If this appeals to you as well, and if you are curious about the Dungeons & Dragons world, then give this a try. So number 3 is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. It is the first book of the very popular Wheel of Time series that has, I think, about 14 books in total. I'm not sure. If you're thinking, whoa, I do not want to be sucked in such a long series, don't worry. I chose this book specifically because I felt it was a pretty self-contained story. So you wouldn't necessarily need to keep reading on if you didn't want to. What is great about these books is the world building. There are many different societies and countries with their own political systems, social norms, even architecture and style. It makes the whole world feel very, very real. What is also great is we start in a small farming town. So we start small in a farming town of Emmons Field in the relatively isolated Two Rivers region. From there, our protagonists travel through the land, slowly learning about the wide world around them, as we the readers also learn. It really makes this learning process feel organic and not just shoved into our faces with a bunch of info dump. We really feel like we're discovering the world along with the characters. The series is known to have a lot of characters, like I mean a lot of characters. And many are very important to the story, but essentially the main characters for this particular novel would be Rand al'Thor, a simple, kind, and honorable farm boy, And in close second, his two best friends, Perrin, a gentle, bulky man who is apprenticed to the local blacksmith, and Matt, the mischievous troublemaker. We also have Egwene, Rand's crush, and Nynaeve, the village wisdom. Though it is made clear that many people find Nynaeve too young for that position. The action and tension starts right away, and it doesn't take long before the characters' lives are thrown into chaos and everything they know changes. This book really keeps you engaged throughout. It is a page-turner. My one or only complaint or warning is that as a woman, I found that although there are plenty of female characters and they are pretty awesome in their own ways, I had a hard time identifying with most of them because they are so manipulative. Like, seriously, every single one. It was even more apparent when I reread it as an adult. But all the women think men are idiots, and the women are just trying to manipulate everybody, which I'm not like that, I don't think, so I don't think every woman is like that. The feminist in me is annoyed by this, but if you can get past that, it is truly a fantastic book. If you love it, you could probably read the second book in the series, The Great Hunt, as it is pretty self-contained as well. But after that, like starting with book 3, the stories become really melded into several books, and you will just be hooked throughout the series if you get to that point. So if you want to know the hype about this popular series, get comfortable because you might not be able to put this one down. So number 2, Dragonwing by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. This is the first book in the Deathgate cycle, which is only a 7-book series. So once again, you can just read the first book and get a pretty self-contained story, but I would recommend reading the entire series, especially since it is only a 7-book investment of time. Once again, great world building and characters are what I love about this novel. I am kind of sensing a theme here with the books I choose. The premise is that long ago, magic evolved on the world, and there were 2 factions of magic users, the Sartans and the Patrons. After much war, Sartans sundered the world into 4, creating a world for each basic element: air, fire, stone, and water. They also created the Labyrinth, which was essentially a jail for the Patrons to help reform them. Now, most people don't even know that these other worlds exist, let alone how to access them. However, our main character, Haplo, is a patron who has escaped the Labyrinth, and he travels to multiple of these worlds, in this case to the world of air, Aeronauts, to create chaos. Aeronauts is a world of floating islands and enchanted dragon ships, so it's extremely interesting. Haplo, like I said, is the main character, and he's a bit of an anti-hero. He has a dog that follows him that he simply named Dog. I personally love Dog. He's the best. Haplo works a lot from the shadows, trying to be unnoticed, but he ends up tangled often in the affairs, more often than not. We follow several other characters' point of views to get a better feel for the world. There are great comedic moments sprinkled in, and once again, it is a worthy escape into the realm of fantasy. This is number 1. This is really my number 1 recommendation. So this is The Aeronauts Windlass by Jim Butcher. I really love this book, and my only complaint is that there isn't more of them yet. It is the first book of a series, and the other books have not been written yet. But once again, it is self-contained, so you don't need the other books to fully enjoy this one and the story. It is a bit of a departure from classic fantasy. I felt there had a little bit of a steampunk twist genre a little bit into it. There's crystal gauntlets that fire energy blasts, flying ships, and they have a mysterious substance called ether that they can use as this substance they call ether silk that is like kind of armor for themselves or even for their ships, their airships. There are also people who can use the ether to do magic. What's really amazing is they're usually mad from using it, and it's just this common thing that if you're able to use ether, you kind of go crazy from it, which I thought was something very unique to place into that. There are entire rules of politeness and respect, and if these aren't followed, there's duels that have to be done with strict protocols. It's a very well-built world and very interesting. One thing that was really surprised me and I thought was awesome was there's a community and social organization of cats that communicate with humans who can speak their language, and nobody will own the cats, although it is well known that sometimes a clan of cats might decide to adopt a family. There is intrigue, action, humor, and just a lot of heart. The characters are very distinct and real. In fact, it's really hard to choose who would be considered the main character because the point of views are shared pretty well between the different characters, and they are so well developed, each with their own ambitions and story arcs. So we have Captain Grimm of the airship Predator. We have Bridget Tagwin, who is from a minor noble house, and Gwendolyn Lancaster, who is from one of the most prominent noble houses. We also have Gwen's cousin Benedict, who makes regular appearances, who is warrior-born. Warrior-borns have cat-like eyes, and they are stronger and faster than regular people. Another great thing is Bridget belongs to Raoul, and Raoul is one of my favorite characters. He's a cat, and he has a lot of wit. This cat's attitude has attitude, and I love it. What I loved was that, and as you can see, there's a lot of I loved, but the female protagonists are amazing. I can actually see myself in them, and I just love them. They are not generic, they're super well developed and strong in their own ways, and unfortunately this isn't something I find that much in fantasy books, so it was super exciting for me to be able to have these female characters that I could relate to. This is really my #1 recommendation. I really enjoyed it, and even going through the book in preparation for this video, I was drawn back in and caught myself rereading it. So it really is a worthwhile read. So thank you so much for watching.